Okay, now let's take a brief tour of Pro Model and the basic objects in Pro Model. There are four of them. So those four are required for any Pro Model that we develop. And in addition to these four, we can have other objects also as needed. So we have entities. We talked about entities previously. So we'll look at how to set up entities. Then we have locations. Okay, so that's a very important part. Well, they are all important. So we have locations. And that's where an entity will arrive, and that's where processing will take place. So you'll have series of entities, and you'll show the path the entities will take um, from one location to another. So, and then you have to define arrival for entities. So, arrival would be for an entity at a particular location. So here entities is anything the model can process, and as we discussed earlier, locations are fixed places and they have capacity. Okay, and here are how to create the records, and I'll show you. We'll look at this in Pro Model. Okay, and then we have arrival again. Arrival at a location for an entity, and we will look at that in more detail. And then we have processing. So once an entity arrives at a location, and then from that location, you do the processing. So you have some processing at the location, and then where should the entity go once the processing is completed at that location. So processing has two parts. One is what processing should take place at a given location. And once the processing is completed, where should the entity be routed? So there are two things in processing. So that's those. I'm going to demonstrate these four things in Pro Model. Okay, and then we will build a very brief example model, a small example model. Okay, so here when you open Pro Model, um, so this is what you'll see in Home tab. Okay, so you'll have a bunch of graphics available to you to use when you build the model. And then we have location, entities, arrival, and processing. So these are the four basic elements or basic objects. And then we have some more. Okay, resources is something that we will use quite often, even though um, it is, you can have models without resources. So you cannot have a model without these four. We have to have these four, otherwise a model will not be complete. Okay. Now, when you start building, okay, you have an option of graphics available to use, okay, and you can also have your own graphic icons that you want to use, which are more appropriate. Which, if you feel that one of the available icons is not suitable for your model, then you can have your own. And there are a couple of things that we have to remember where the icons will be stored. So if you go to general information, and that gives you where the graphic is going to come from for that given model. For a particular model, where is that going to come from? Okay, you can change that for that particular model. But if you go to options, okay, so that gives you where the defaults are. Okay, so we have the model default, so graphics library default. Okay, so default graphic file. So default graphic file, if you browse, you can select anything you want, but we want to have that in a place where you will have access to it always. So that will be okay. So documents, Pro Model, graphics, samples, and then you can select one of these. Okay, so I think I have Pro Model GLB as the default graphics file. Okay, and so when you open, okay, I'm going to close Pro Model, okay, and then I'll open Pro Model. Okay, so now it's gonna the graphics library that's automatically set up is the one that we selected as the default. So if you look at it, so you see the file name is different, but that's where the default graphics library is coming from. All right. So if you want to add more graphic icons, then you have to go to Tools, go to Graphics Editor. Okay. So now you have the default one. Okay. And you can add more icons by simply copy pasting. Okay. So here is a blank one. So you have an icon from the web somewhere, or you can create one on your own using these tools. But if you have something, I don't know, maybe let me just create one. So I have this icon that I took from the web, and just copy pasted it. So I copy that. Go here and do control, not control V. So you have to go edit, paste BMP. So that would paste it, and then you give a name here. So if I say waiting 9, okay, so, and then you save it. And that goes in there. And then you get another empty square for you to add more. And if you build your own set of icons, then you can save it, okay, either the default folder, or you can save it anywhere you want, and use that library as your, okay, let me close this and get out of here. Okay. And when you build a new model, you can go to general information and select that the graphics library that you created as the graphics library for your model. So here, for example, I already created one for the bank example, and that's here. Okay, so bank icons, and I saved it in this folder, and I open it, and that becomes the graphic icon library. So now if I go and say I want to create new locations, that the icons from that library will show up here, and then I can use those icons. All right, so this is general information, and in the next video we'll look at each one of these 4 basic objects in Pro Model.